Well, I'm very excited and pleased to be making this introduction to these two young men today, and in that for two reasons. First, David Mortlock and Tom Cochran are a part of a trend that I think I assumed was happening, and Tom sort of reinforced to me that he knows 30 plus young people, men and women, who have chosen to reside in Camden in the last 3 or 4 years and maintaining their work with their companies elsewhere. And so I'm just happy to see that that's happening, and that they're continuing their thriving work careers residing here with their offices elsewhere. And the the second, most of you might know, or most of you do know, that I spent from 1997 to 2012, those 15 years, trying to bring instant minute-by-minute news to Camden and Rockport and Belfast and Rockland residents. And we were wildly successful on all accounts, with one important exception. We could not generate enough revenue to pay for the cost of doing this minute-by-minute live news. And I often use the example to show the difference between today and that period in 1997 and 2012. One of our friends that you knew from past at Parker Late, one Sunday morning, he showed up at what Walgreens now, but showed up, and there was a fire that Sunday morning. And he drove up in his old Jeep, and he says, Rich, my daughter Dodie just called me from Atlanta and said that there was a fire downtown. And so that's the kind of news that we were bringing. We just couldn't generate the revenue to support that kind of news at that time. And so I was really excited when I saw what David and Tom were doing, and that it's a breakthrough in meeting the challenges of timely news to the hyperlocal communities. And I think that that they were they're onto something, and I'm having fun interacting every once in a while with them with some thoughts and some reactions and some ideas for how it might improve and what might really make it something more like what Village Soup was back in 1999 and 2000. And so David is a partner at Bain and Company, a global consultancy across 65 cities and 40 countries. And he works out of the company's New York's offices while living here on Dillingham Point, where Jim Bowditch used to live. And then Tom is currently managing director of a national healthcare PR firm, and was previously a senior official responsible for digital technology at the White House and the State Department. And then he was also a chief technology officer at The Atlantic magazine. And so Tom and David, thank you for being with us. Carry forward and show us the future of hyperlocal news.
Thank you for having us. It is really nice to see some friendly faces in the room, and Samantha sends her regards. Our story actually started 30 years ago. Tom and I went to the same high school. We went to boarding school in New Hampshire. Tom was always the guy everyone was friends with, so obviously I was one of his many friends. And then we lost touch after graduation. 30 years later, as I was walking down Main Street, walked by Zoot Coffee, and there was Tom in the window working off of a laptop. Been 30 years, and so I walked in and I said, Tom, what's going on? And he said, well, my wife and I decided to move our 3 young kids to live in Lincolnville, and now I live here. And so after that 30-year gap, we became friends again, and because we really hadn't kept up. And I've had some health issues, so I got to take some time off from my real job and spent a lot of time sitting and musing with Tom about, boy, there's a lot going on in this town of Camden and Rockport and Lincolnville and Rockland, and I don't know much about what's going on. And I think Tom, who's always been civically minded with his experience in the Obama White House and the State Department, felt the same way. And one of the things that we realized was the towns try to be transparent, right? All of Camden's 130 130 town meetings and school board meetings are posted on the internet, the videos of them. But they're all 2 or 3 hours long. They're boring as hell. And impossible to you go once and you don't really ever want to go back again. And at the same time, when I left on my sabbatical, I was a huge skeptic of this new technology called generative AI. I don't know how many of you have played around with it, but I thought it was one of these fads that everyone talks about and then sort of it disappears. But I committed myself during my time off to learn more about it. And so one of the things that Tom and I discussed, I even remember exactly where we said it, and I actually owe Samantha the original idea, she's on one of the town committees, the Camden Conservation Committee. And I said to Tom, could we take the video and have ChatGPT or AI tool, any AI tool really, any large language model, summarize what happened in that meeting? And then right away with Tom's skills, we embarked on that journey. Literally in the next 5 minutes, he got the transcript, he threw it into an LLM model, and our first reaction was, holy cow, this is amazing. Then we did it again, and then it started to hallucinate. And you could say, okay, well, what did Donald Trump say at the meeting, or what did Barack Obama say at the meeting? And because it wanted to please the person typing, it would say, well, Donald Trump came and said this. And obviously, we didn't have presidents or former presidents coming to our town meetings. And so through this journey over the last 4 or 5 months, as we've developed this tool, we've gone through highs and lows as we've been amazed by what this thing can do, and then realizing that you have to actually be very careful with it. I'm going to talk more, but I'm going to let Tom jump in and say a few words.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to this crowd here. I see a lot of familiar faces. It's good to put names to these faces now. I love living in a small town. I think it's really amazing. We primarily moved here because we have 3 little girls, and that is responsibility and job number 1 for us. Responsibility and job number 2 is to be part of a community and recognize that I'm from away. But I also want to be a good citizen and a good community member by contributing back some of the skills that I've developed over 25 years in Washington, D.C. here. And recognize that locally, regionally, and nationally, we have less of a transparency problem and more of an accessibility problem. We don't have time. No one has time to go to a 3-hour meeting except for the people who are kind enough to serve on the select board or attend select board meetings. But I don't think they're very boring. I think they're very interesting, and there are moments of really, really, really important things that happen over 3 hours, right? Nobody has 3 hours. And let me talk to you about attention. We live in there are actually 2 select board, one former and one present that I see here. Thank you for your service. Attention is something that is really, really in short supply. The average attention span of an American adult today is 7 seconds. The average attention span of a goldfish is 8 seconds, okay? So if we were marketing to goldfish, we would be more successful, but we're not. In 7 seconds at the average reading speed of a human, that's 23 words of information. That's 1 sentence. So you have 1 sentence to convey the sum total of what you want to in 7 seconds. That's impossible. And it's not because we're not trying, it's because there's information overload. Today, in 2024, almost 2025, the amount of information that's created on a daily basis is the equivalent of 1 billion Sunday New York Times. Every day. That's a lot of information. That's 1,000 times more information that was created just 20 years ago. So we have an information problem, too much information, and attention is remaining the same. In fact, it's kind of going down because everyone has one of these, right? Everyone is doom scrolling to death and looking at things that are very interesting and time wasting, but sometimes also very important. And so our goal is to figure out a way to get into the jet stream of conversation with things that are very important. It's like eating your vegetables versus eating candy. We are eating candy all day, every day, and I know as a parent of 3 little girls how good that is. That's not very good. I want them to eat their broccoli, and we all need to eat our broccoli in small bites. The second anecdote I want to add is how many of you remember the Apollo landing? A lot. I don't, because I was born in '77. But I know about it, of course. And let me tell you this. So the computing power of the Apollo landing craft versus the computing power of this thing in my hand. This is 72,000 times more powerful than what was used to put the man on the moon. That's insane. And it's in your pocket today. And so we have a superpower today, which is technology, to be able to parse through this unbelievable amount of information that happens to get really small snippets of information that matter to everybody here. Everything from climate change resiliency to why did they pave this road versus that road, all sorts of information of real value and consequence to you. It's really important for us to be able to condense it in a format that is accessible and readable to you. But the most important thing that we would like to stress is that this is not a media exercise. This is really a technology enterprise, which is trying to take 3 hours of information and condense it down into something that you can scan for 30 seconds to be just this more informed about what's happening in our town. And if all of us can be just a little bit more informed on the details of a conversation rather than the opinions of a conversation, then maybe we can have a little bit better civic understanding, civic education, civic awareness, and we can start to disagree on the things that were said that are based on facts as opposed to emotionally heated and getting very angry about things. What we've noticed, and what's really important, is that whenever you affect change in anything that really matters, there'll be about 10% of people who really love it and are so into it. There are also 10% of the people that no matter what you do are just against it and hate it. And then there's an 80% that are busy with their lives, taking care of themselves, their parents, their children, whatever. We're trying to serve that giant middle group of people who need to be a little bit more informed on what's happening in the town. And so everybody can then participate effectively in the community. Do you want to add a little bit more to that?
So what we started at Zoot, which was literally on his computer, just taking a transcript and dumping it into a model and saying summarize, has turned into a complete end-to-end automated AI newsroom. And we're going to show you a slide in here that describes the process that we take. So we now are covering something like, I don't know, 20 towns. And every morning, without Tom or I touching anything, I get a newsletter from Wiscasset or from Camden or because we are expanding wherever a town records videos. So one of the insights that we came away with is we said, there's all this content that's available. So this is Camden, Maine, has a wonderful YouTube website. You'll see the select board meeting in red, July 2nd. It's an hour and 21 minutes long. There were 214 streams of the video in our town. That's just not enough people engaging in our town. If you go to the next slide as another example, or do you want me to, you got it? This is the Boston City Council. Their meeting on July 10th was 3 hours and 19 minutes. Boston. 217 views. Not enough.
Let me add one comment. So that's not watching the whole thing. YouTube marks a views if you've watched 30 seconds or more. So it's even smaller than we think.
So if we could go, we don't have to do the next, here, can I? So we have a very simple process. Anybody can sign up. You go to Civic Sunlight, .ai. You put in your name, your email address, and you pick what town you want a subscription. What's been fun is we've had real choices to make about this, not just technology choices, but also principles. And one of the things that we were trying to figure out is how are we going to pay for this? It's not free to use these tools. We discussed whether we should make them a subscription for people who want to sign up. And one of the things that Tom and I kind of feel strongly about is everyone should have access to this information. And so there shouldn't be a economic paywall, some sort of friction to getting people access. So these newsletters are all free to citizens. We then figured out, okay, well, who can we serve that will help pay for all of this? And we've settled on working with local news organizations. I don't know if you guys have heard from Mid-Coast Villager or someone else in this environment talking about the challenges of local news, but it is destruction, pure destruction what's happening to local news. It's incredibly expensive to run a newsroom. People are expensive, and the old way of doing business just doesn't work to cover all the important things that are happening at a hyper-local level, which gets to Rich's comment in the opening. And so if we take any given meeting, here's our pitch to local news organizations. If you take any given meeting and you assume it's 2 hours, your reporter has to drive to the meeting, 20, 30 minutes. It's a 2-hour meeting. They go home, and he or she has to sit and look at their notes and write the thing for 2 more hours. Then they have to bring it in and talk to the editor and the publisher, and 2 more hours before it gets into some sort of distribution. Let's say it's 6.5 hours of for one meeting. Imagine the per hour cost of a person, 6 hours. Our pitch is every meeting costs $20. You cannot replicate this with humans. It's really tricky, though. The technology is really tricky, and Tom's going to talk about the technology. But we're getting a lot of positive feedback about this. We get some negative feedback, but mostly positive feedback, both from town administrators, from citizens, which has been fantastic. We can cover all these towns in Maine and reach 300,000 citizens. That grows every day. It's probably been updated since we last put this together. We have a vision of taking this all over the country. And so we're working with an organization like the National Trust for Local News. I don't know how many of you guys are aware that they bought a lot of the Maine papers, but they also have papers in Colorado and in Georgia and soon in other states. We're talking to them about covering their geographic footprint. We just got a outreach from the New Hampshire Public Radio, and they want to potentially partner with us to cover New Hampshire. So this is a scalable tool that we built. And Tom, why don't you talk about exactly what is this AI newsroom that we've built?
Sure, happy to talk about that. This is the complicated part where I don't want to talk too into the weeds on the technology, but I also want to explain what it does and what it is, what it isn't. So we have a source, we have source material, we have a video. We take the video, we can transcribe it and transcribe it into a 3-hour transcript that can then be processed through multiple steps, most importantly with fact-checking capabilities. So in a newsroom, you have people who are editors, we have journalists, we have fact-checkers, we have copywriters. So all of these are skills and roles that need to be recreated in an artificial intelligence world. And so all of these steps are then done using artificial intelligence. Each step here goes from the video to the end product to make sure that the quality of the output at the end is satisfactory in a very neutral and objective tone to make sure that we're not sensationalizing something, that we're not underrepresenting or overrepresenting something. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of gray area where you have to land right in the middle and recognize that there will be some people that are upset that you covered something, and there are some people that are upset that you didn't cover something. And no matter what we do, we will never get it exactly perfect, but our goal is to get it very, 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 very close to being exactly what we need. We're at probably a 90 to 95% accuracy rate on things like named entities, and what that means is the name of the person in the meeting was accurately represented. When there is a Steve in the meeting, or there are 2 Steves or 3 Johns, we get the right John. And if we don't get the right John, then we remove the name from it, and so we don't inappropriately attribute something to the wrong person. There are times, because it's 90 to 95% accurate, there's a 5 to 10% chance that there might be an error. And we acknowledge that and recognize that, and we also solicit and encourage feedback. And we want to figure out sort of the next phase of this is how do we incorporate a human feedback loop from the community to actually contribute to this so we can collectively run this experiment together. And I think the beauty of this, what we're doing is that we're not doing this, we are doing this as a community to figure out a way to improve civic education, civic awareness in a local community setting, maybe in a main regional setting, and maybe in a national setting when we can all be slightly more informed as to what's happening in our towns and our communities, so we can have that civic discourse and we can have that civic education and that civic awareness. I think, and I think a lot of people in this room would agree, that it's really, really important. And I know that people who have worked in media know it's really important, but it's also really hard to build a business on top of that. So we're trying to figure out how to solve that here locally. We're not coming from New York or San Francisco or the Bay Area and imposing ideas locally. We're trying to do it locally and go the other way, a bottom-up grassroots approach to civic awareness.
So if there's some principles or some concepts for you guys to remember, I would say generative AI does an amazing job taking lived human experience, which is messy, and creating order and insight. And so that's what we're doing with town conversations. We're taking messy conversations and turning them into a little bit of order so we can understand what's going on. We have a lot of other development ideas. So what we've been talking about is a moment in time for a town. Meeting happens, you know, the McGonagall River Committee, the Cemetery Committee happens. We deliver you insights into what happened in that meeting. What we have realized as we looked across towns is that towns are solving the same issues we're solving in many cases. Harbor resiliency is an issue in every main harbor. We are having these conversations in silos. We ultimately are going to string together all these conversations and be able to see what's happening, how are different towns addressing a similar issue and tackling harbor resiliency so that we benefit from our mutual shared experience trying to go through what's happening in our towns. So that's one idea that we have for developing this. We want to look across time. We're going to have an archive. And when you think about what an archive can do, it's going to say, well, how has that topic evolved over time so that you have some context for discussions that happened a year or 2 years ago and where we are today. Are we making good progress? Are we at a completely different place than where we thought we were going to be? Third, we want to start to figure out how to evaluate the efficacy of these town meetings, and through the use of AI, understand what patterns in town meetings lead to better outcomes so that we can build a playbook to share with towns to say, well, this is how meetings, the effective meetings, this is how they're run. The ineffective meetings, this is how they're run. And so we have an idea of using the data of these meetings, how they were structured, how much dialogue, how much debate, who spoke, was there too many people speaking, was there too few people speaking, all the dynamics in a room. All of that is data on the meeting, the dynamics of the meeting. And if you compare that with the efficacy of the meeting, you start to get a sense for what works. How do you get local government to work better? We have ideas to move on from civics. So we just had a conversation this morning with Jeff Hart, who's the athletic director at the high school. We want to use a second area of local news is high school sports, which is very hard to cover, costly to cover. And we think we can use AI to do an effective job covering high school sports. We have a meeting tomorrow with Zach, I can't remember Zach's last name, who's the barber here on Mechanic Street. I opened the Mechanic Street barber. I don't know how many other people go. I asked him about a week and a half ago, what's the range of conversations that happen in your barber seat? And you know, you can imagine in a week how many different topics come up. And I asked him, well, for free publicity, would you be willing to get mic'd up? And now you have to get approval of your customers. And can we record all those conversations and once a week summarize musings from the barber chair and get a sense for what's the conversation that's happening among us in town. Those are some ideas of how we're going to take technology and sort of transform our ability to understand each other and understand what's going on in the government. So I think that's what we've got. Let's see, is there anything else that would be good to show? We got a bunch of ideas to develop. This is our technology architecture. We're using a lot of technology, and we don't know. Those guys are fine. Is it time okay to open up for questions? Tom, are you good?
I think that's great.
Questions?
Let's do questions.
Okay.
Double mic here.
Oh,
Nope, it's good. If you are physically able to come to this mic stand, please do that.
So monetizing. Right now, you're targeting the existing media companies. They're not. I mean, you're going to overpower them. And so, how long are they going to be interested in what's their role in the world, and how are they going to be afforded to pay you to do what you're doing?
It's a good question. As long as they exist, $20 a meeting is actually a great deal for them. So they are the most obvious choice right now to get this product out in the hands of citizens quickly. We have also toyed around with the idea of going to philanthropic people and saying, you know, we could cover every single meeting in Maine for $200,000. Every single public meeting that's available in Maine. 10,000 meetings. So right now we're working through people who have access to emails and have a business that relies on content, that needs this content, that has a mission to do good in the world. But we're open. If someone wants to sponsor all of Maine and get this in the hands of every citizen in Maine, we certainly welcome that conversation. So that doesn't really answer your question, Rich, but you know, for $200,000 to cover every single town meeting in all of Maine doesn't seem like that much to strengthen our democracy.
I think I have the answer for this one. I was on the select board in Rockport for 3 years, and I can tell you how to make money doing this. You can get the towns to cover your fee and charge them a fee to do it, because right now what they do is they pay overtime to somebody to take notes at the meeting that's already recorded. We just don't take notes, okay? And then see if the bylaws of the towns will allow that to happen. Then you replace the person who sat there for 3.5 hours taking very boring, mundane notes. They got paid overtime to do it, and it might be a cost advantage to the town to do so. Another source.
I do want to make one clarification that these are not meeting minutes. These are not 100% accurate, they're 95% accurate. So there may need to be, you could pay for the 5% to get to 100% if someone scans it and says, totally accurate, you missed 1 point, put the point in. So I think you're right in that going to the towns can certainly be one way to expose this and monetize it.
Town meeting minutes are 75% accurate.
Good one.
I think this is very exciting stuff. I really do. We've got great problems with the media nationwide, and we've got great problems with a lack of accuracy and people in the media or even citizens paying attention to what is reality and what are facts. That's kind of gone by the board. I do kind of question your business model, maybe in a little bit in the same vein that Jeff did, because there are great media deserts out there, and if you're depending on local media to do this, there are going to be big patches. I'm talking about beyond Maine, where you can't, that business model I don't think is going to work. But there are lots of other options. And so that's a comment more than a question. But I also wondered in your presentation, I mean, it's exciting stuff. I think it's got tremendous potential. But one thing that happens in the newsroom is setting of priorities on what is to be featured, what is most important. And I kind of do a mental disconnect between this technology and that function. How will that be covered? Because if it's strict, whoops, this thing I think pooched on me. Okay, thank you. If you know, without the without that portion of the decision-making process that takes place in the newsroom, I see that as a problem with the technology. But maybe you have an answer for it.
Sure. Sounds good. So on the question of our business model, we're strong. You know, the local news is tough business, and so we've struggled with how to think about monetizing this as well. I have, in our discussions with local news organizations, it's not that they don't want to cover towns that don't have a newspaper. It's just that it's too expensive to. And what we're offering, and which seems to be getting some traction, is the idea that for $1,000 to $1,500, you can cover any town in America, any town and city in America. And so it is infinitesimally small to have a branded product in a news desert, as long as that town publishes their town meetings. So that's the idea, is that, so when I go to, when I talk to the National Trust for Local News, I said, look, we can be narrowly focused on this. We can just cover the geographic footprint that you're in. They do care about news deserts, which is good. Not everybody does, but they do. Or we can be expansive in our thinking, and you guys don't have to hire another reporter, and you can have your name. If we did this in every city and every town in America, you could have a branded product everywhere tomorrow. So we're trying to be a little disruptive in our thinking around the business model. And news deserts are definitely an important part of what we're trying to support.
Your comment about the editorial process is fascinating, both from an academic and intellectual standpoint, but also from an efficacy of the output of our product. Is that me? Same ringtone. It is absolutely true that the prioritization of topics that come out is very important. This is where we're turning it upside down, and right now the editorial process is on the end of here is what we have, the sum total of it, edit it. The process we have now is in the beginning, which is we have essentially a team of AI assistants, and we have to train them as if they're new employees to tell them what is important in terms of prioritization. There are two ways we can do that. One is, here is 100 meetings from the previous year. Tell me what they talked about. And within 1 minute, it'll tell you, here are the topics that were discussed. This one was talked about in 100 meetings, this one in 12 meetings. And so it could use artificial intelligence to weight the topics that are discussed. That's one way to inform editorial output. The other is to manually override it sort of in the middle of the process and say, here are the 4 that I really need you to focus on when you are extracting topics out. And so make sure that when these 4 topics are mentioned, they're included in the stream, in the output. And so this is a really important part of the editorial flow, which is taking it from the end of the process and inserting it into the beginning of the process. So you do it once, as opposed to every single time a newsletter goes out. And that's how you really reduce the labor costs, which is, we're gonna have a meeting with one of our customers, and in the onboarding process, we talk about the town. and say, what are the things that are important to the town? And then we feed that into the AI so it runs it over time, and then it intelligently gets it 90 to 95% accurate every single time. And the best part is, since you don't have any pushback or talkback or employees that are angry saying that this is not what I want to do, I don't want to do this, AI always wants to please you and do the right thing, and it very often says, that's an excellent idea. I really appreciate your input. Very validating.
So I have a couple of questions. I believe there are some towns that don't videotape their meetings. So how first of all, how do you deal with a non-videotape meeting? Secondly, there are several AI platforms. How did you choose the one that you use? And have you compared those platforms in the way that they pass the information?
Sure. Let me answer the second question first. It is not one platform. It's actually it's like Coca-Cola. There are multiple ingredients, or it's like cooking. There are multiple technology platforms that go into this, and that's why it's not as simple as taking a transcript and then running it through ChatGPT or any tool and then having an output. There are 9 to 10 different technologies that are weaving together with this recipe to make it work on the other end of this. There's also the business risk we're trying to mitigate, which is if one of these platforms triples their costs, we want to be able to plug in a different tool so we don't price ourselves out of being competitive for local media companies that want to have a de minimis cost of a product. Do you want to talk about how to get towns to record?
So we envision being able to take audio recordings. We don't right now automate that, but we certainly can. And then through our partnerships, we're encouraging them to get the towns to start recording. And so, yeah, you know, we want every town to be transparent. There are actually some rules in Maine, bylaw or ordinances or that require it, but I don't know if they require video recording. But we're working through our partners to try to close the gap.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you guys have hit the nail on the head. I got to tell you, it's unbelievable. Just to cite a very simple example you gave, you mentioned that you met with Jeff Hart the other day, or yesterday or something, about sports. Eat it? Okay, yeah. I'm an avid football fan, and I happen to know the coach of the high school team out here at Camden Hills. And I do get the Villager, spending $3 a week or whatever to get it. And they, not once since that new publication came out in September, have had any article in there about the Camden Hills football team, which I was trying to follow. And it just seems to me that you could make a pitch to the publishers of that outfit where they could cover all the sports and doesn't need to be a full page. They're basically a feature publication at this point. They shouldn't be called a newspaper, in my opinion. But anyway, I just think you're right on. I can't believe this is probably the best Rotary presentation I've ever heard, and I've been a member for 30-some years. It's awesome. Keep up the great work, and I look forward to following you. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we should stop now then.
I have a question or a statement online, and Chris Rector of Thomason would like you to know that he thinks it would be very helpful to share this information with the Maine Municipal Association. Have you met with the Maine Municipal Association?
No, but Chris, if you're willing to introduce us, we'd certainly take the call.
Okay. Can I follow up on a question since I have this mic open? When you answered the question about how you're going to get the audio or video recordings from all the towns in Maine, just off the top of your head, what percentage of towns produce currently a reliable and understandable audio recording of their meetings?
Understandable from a technology perspective, or what they're saying in the meeting?
No. It's yes, clear enough to be interpreted.
Right now, our estimate from researching Maine, there are about 400 towns in Maine, and maybe 100 to 120 of them have reliable streaming online. That can certainly increase. Actually, COVID is the thing that really pushed that number significantly higher, as some of us, some who were on select boards, the functioning of government still has to happen. But now we have been able to do this, continue this effort, both in Maine but also nationally. So I think that the range is somewhere between 25 to 40% of the municipalities in the United States do this. If you want to answer the reliable and regularity of it, it probably goes down to maybe 15 to 20%. There's room for improvement, right? But we don't want to let perfect be the enemy of the good here. We want to focus on the glass half full and focus on those that do it well and emphasize those. And there's I guess a peer pressure element to it. If that town's doing it, that town's doing it, maybe we should do it too. So let's not wait for everything to be perfect. Let's try to do this in the towns that have it right now, and then the rising tide will hopefully lift all the boats.
Thank you.
One thing quickly to add to that is that the mix of who does it and who doesn't is skewed towards bigger places. So it's 20% of towns, but it's 40 or 50% of population or more.
I had to lower this to my height. Thanks, Jeff. I think I've had a subscription to your service since the first week you came out. A friend of mine and I had been talking about, how boring it is to read all the transcripts and stuff, and so she invited me to that in that first week. So I was curious how many people here in the room already have a subscription. So, yeah. It is it is built for somebody like myself with very limited time and just wants to skim through and pick out the things that I want to read. So great service, and it does work.
Thank
So,
you. You can sign up at civicsunlight.ai. And the other thing that I didn't mention, which is really, I think, remarkable about generative AI, is that you can instantly change. I know we got to wrap, but I'll give you another sign of magic here. Instantly, you can change tone, style, and language. So we were sitting at the Smoothie Shack the day there was all that stuff going around about Springfield, immigrants in Springfield, Ohio. And it sort of pissed me off. And I asked Tom, hey, Tom, can we spin up a Springfield, Ohio newsletter? And can you do it in Haitian Creole? And at the table with the tools that we have on our mobile phones, that has 70,000 more, much more power than the Apollo program, which is amazing. Did I get that right? That's that. Okay. From the Smoothie Shack, we set up a Springfield, Ohio newsletter in Haitian Creole in like 20 minutes.
So I'm just wondering, how are you advertising this? Because I've been a member since probably the day that Lenny was. And I've talked to a lot of people in the last few years, and their opinion that I've heard is, well, I don't follow it. I know so-and-so and I trust them. So this is a really great tool that I've sent to a lot of people, and I know that they've signed up. But how are you getting the word out? Is it this sort of thing? Is it just word of mouth? Are you advertising?
It's word of mouth at this point. Part of why we're trying to do deals, partnerships with local news organizations is they have existing email distribution lists of like tens of thousands or thousands. But it's simple. If you don't get it, sign up. When you get the next one, forward it, because there's a link in there that people can follow, and the sign up takes you literally 15 seconds.
Can I add one more from online? Chris Rector would be happy to introduce you. I'll let you two get in touch with him. And Adam Lackman, it may not be a short answer, but the question will read quickly. Can you explain how the technology differentiates between opinion and news? Meetings often include public comment before meeting topics. How do you handle these two in context, excuse me?
That's a great question. It's a very challenging question to answer in less than 1 minute. It has to do with informing the artificial intelligence before. This actually goes back to the editorial process, which is turning it upside down. And in the beginning, explaining with large blocks of data the history of the town, the conversations of the town, the names of the people that are speaking. So the AI assistant, similar to an employee, imagine a junior employee and throwing them into the select board meeting and saying, tell me what happened. there's no way they get it, right? So you have to bring the AI assistant and agent up to speed using large amounts of data to hopefully, in a probabilistic manner, meaning it'll get 90 to 95% of it accurate, but it'll also miss 5 to 10% of it, right? But if meeting minutes are 75% accurate, then that's a significant improvement over the efficacy of what we have today. The goal really is we don't want to let perfect be the enemy of the good. We want to get better and better every single day with objective and constructive and creative feedback, which we've received from this room. The feedback that we receive that's useful is that, which is, this is wrong because of this. The feedback that is not helpful is, this is terrible. There's no context to it, and we don't understand what that means. So when someone provides feedback in an objective manner, we respond and we take it and we incorporate it into the workflow so we can make it better. Because the beauty and the power of this really is not that there are two guys that cook this up in Zoot. It's two guys as part of a local community that are trying to do an experiment in a small community here in Maine to make something better here locally that can then be rolled out maybe to the state or maybe even larger. Imagine if every town in America could use this. This would be a really wonderful experiment that was germinated here in Camden, Maine.
One other quick thing to add to that is prompt design matters a lot. So prompt design is not just the training, here are the names and all this, but it's how they should go do the task. And Tom and I spent a lot of time designing prompt. It's what you type in that says, here's what I want you to do. And when you get to stuff like public comments, opinions, you have to tell it to look out for those things, and then it does. And so we have been experimenting with prompt design to make sure, hey, don't generalize when it's only one person speaking. So we used to have a problem that said one person in the public would say something and it'd say, the public is outraged, and it was like one person. And so we had to tell it not to generalize. Those are examples of prompt design.
One of the early examples that you had was it said a discussion was about, and what it was is a citizen standing up at the beginning of the meeting and reading a letter, and there was no discussion. The select board didn't respond to it at all, and so have we resolved that issue?
So then, yes, because everything was a discussion originally, and so we learned through trial and error that we had to tell it to look out before stuff that's more like a readout versus a discussion. So those are the types of things that we're teaching it how to do its job. When you're certain of something, be certain. When you're not certain of something, don't make it sound like you're certain of something. And so it changes its language in the newsletter. Have we gotten it all right? No. We're getting feedback all the time, and we continue to try to improve it, but we are working diligently on it.
Judith, if you could do the honors, please.
Thank you.
And 50 cents, how about that? That's the first time. We have $340.50, and I would like to ask Mr. Mortlock if you would draw the ticket for determining who's going to.
This one's more. Tom Cochran. Oh, I'll pull it. Doesn't matter who pulls it.
I'll tell you what. Use your artificial intelligence. Interpret what I said, and go for it, Tom. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
2898. Who is it? Who? Oh. Well, Graham, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Here we go. Son of a gun.
Thank you, Judith. Now you're Sergeant at Arms.
Son of a gun. We're going to have to buy a new deck.
What the? You gotta be kidding me. Woo!
Joan, you won.
See you at Sea Dog tonight, Graham. You're buying. Joan, you're up. You're Sergeant at Arms.
When I heard that Graham drew the winning card, I said, "Oh, we won," but you know, that's kind of presumptuous. I found myself today with $1 in my wallet. I will go to the bank and get some more cash, but I want to note that we had a very lengthy phone ringing situation, which a friend of mine in another table said that's worth $2. Yeah, okay. And was there another phone? Was there another?
I'll give you 3 because it was a spammer.
Oh, that's terrible. So I want to start off, I want to just say that was a fantastic presentation. And we were going to have a conversation about Thanksgiving. We're short on time, so we're going to save that conversation for another day. Hello, gift to somebody else. And I think that we are all hugely blessed and thankful for having people come to our town, care about it enough to bring new ideas, and that means that everybody's gonna, we also have people listening to those ideas and providing great feedback and questioning. So I think everybody gets to give $1 for a great meeting today. Okay? So we do have a minute or two. I tell you what, I'm gonna kick off this Thanksgiving topic that we will follow up on closer to Thanksgiving, perhaps. But if you asked our children what their favorite Thanksgiving or something they really remember about Thanksgiving, it was the time when Graham and I decided enough with the turkeys. Let's just have pizza for Thanksgiving. And for our children, that is a very happy memory. So I just wanted to share that before we split up. Does anybody want to give a happy $1 before we proceed? Yes.
Well, I wanted to give my Thanksgiving story because I'm not going to be here next week because I'm going to go visit my grandchild in Florida. So
Too bad.
8 months old. But my Thanksgiving story is my Graham and Gramp were over at the house. There was about 22 of us around the table. And my dad and his mother-in-law, Grammy, did not get along ever. So they were arguing back and forth. And she picked up the mustard container and she swears that she thought that the cover was on, but it wasn't. And she threw it across the table from one end to the other, and all the mustard went all down my dad's shirt. And he is a big Maine farmer, and he had on his best shirt. And that, from that Thanksgiving forward, has been the funniest story that my grandmother used to tell, because it kind of started there. They liked each other a little bit after that.
That is great. I would say that takes the cake, but I'm going to say it takes the pumpkin pie. Great story. Okay. Anybody else, or shall I ring? Oh, there's somebody on the. Is there somebody online? It's me. So I get to ring the bell. All right. Have a great week. Oh, the money? You do whatever you want with it. You do whatever you want. Sure. Give it. That's a great idea. That's a really nice idea.